Welcome back to the Formula E Zone podcast. Today we will be discussing the crazy race, the carnage race, the absolute drama that was the Mexico City Prix. But as always, before we jump into any of the juicy topics, who's going to be talking and discussing this with me today? So once again, I'm going to be joined by Jack. Hello, Jack.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be back.
Are you good? You enjoy the race?
Oh, I did. Well, yeah, I did. We'll get onto that, but yeah.
All right, good. That's a good start. And I'm also going to be joined today by Tobias.
In the words of Jack George Maynard the Great, hello everyone. I'm good, yeah. Thank you.
Oh wow. Dear, I'm going to be haunted for that for the rest of this podcast, aren't I? I'm just going to be haunted.
Now.
Maybe I should just do it as a start every time. No, I'm not. We'll just play around. Maybe we'll take it in turns. You know what? We'll see what happens. We'll play around with it.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
I'm looking forward to Dan starting the next podcast. Hello, everybody.
I don't know if I can follow in your footsteps and do that. And anyway, let's not talk about that because we've got a lot to talk about today. Mexico Prix. Going back to Mexico, we've had some cracking races in the past, and after a few solid races and a start to season 5, I was a little bit unsure if this was going to be able to follow in the season 5 trend, and I was thinking, it's a difficult circuit to overtake. We've seen in the past few years, maybe it could be a little bit boring. So let's start off then with qualifying. Probably, I would say, the most normal, in quotation marks, qualifying we've seen so far this year. No real major track evolution. There was obviously a little bit, and we saw a little bit of a mixed up grid, but nothing too crazy. It was Pascal Wehrlein who took his first Formula E pole, Lucas de Grassi in second, showing that Audi does have a bit of pace. Then we saw Felipe Massa. I think that was really the big story in third, and Ollie Rowland in fourth. So I'll start with you first, Jack. Was there anything major you wanted to pick out from qualifying?
I think you touched on it there. I'll touch on Ollie Rowland. I thought that was a massive thing for Nissan, because Nissan haven't really been at the races. They've been there or thereabouts, but for Ollie Rowland to come in group qualifying, because you have to remember, you have to go back to group qualifying, because he was the fastest in group qualifying. So for me, I thought that was a real job well done, and a statement of his talent, because we all know it's there, and he's shown it when he was in Formula E before with Mahindra. That he was quick, but I thought that was a real statement of intent from Ollie Rowland, and hopefully, maybe for him, can he now push that on into further races in the season. So that he stood out for me.
Yeah, and out qualifying Buemi as well. That was really impressive.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I was say it. First time I realised it. I think Buemi has outqualified his teammate over the last, 20-something races. That's a rare occasion. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, Jack, I cut you off there.
Yeah, because Buemi is super consistent, and you have to remember, even when he was obviously with Nicolas Prost, Prost sadly just wasn't on the same level, just couldn't get what Buemi could get out of that E-downs, whereas Oliver Rowland has been a much more closer match for Buemi. Nothing against Prost. Prost, he won a good couple of Formula E races, but Buemi just always seemed to shine, whereas Rowland has been a bit more closer to him so far in season 5, which I think that's a really strong driver pairing. I think if the Nissan Edam's car can just slowly progress as the season's coming, which I think they're showing signs of, because in Santiago they were fairly quick, and they proved it again in Mexico. So I think that team is definitely moving in the right direction.
Yeah, they definitely could have won the last 2 races, I feel.
Yeah, what really...
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And what really stood out to me is that, again, all the experts' opinions on BMW in pre-season testing were wrong. I mean, we had people saying that BMW is going to dominate all of season 5, and now the best BMW driver, Antonio Felix da Costa, starting in 5th, with Mahindra, Audi, Venturi and Nissan cars starting ahead of him. I love Formula E. I said it in the last episode, it's so closely and tightly packed, the grid. And it was a big surprise, obviously, to see Felix da Costa start from 5th. But that being said, it's great to have the so-called favourites starting not in the front row, but a bit behind.
Well, people starting at the back. We had championship leader Sam Bird,
Ooh.
dead last, 22nd. Daniel Abt, 21st. Robin Frijns in 20th. And Jerome D'Ambrosio, 18th. So it wasn't plain sailing for everyone, was it, Toby?
It wasn't, no, absolutely. Sam Bird had a, technical failure at his car. He just didn't have any drive going into the stadium section on his outlap. And that's what caused him to retire from group qualifying, meaning that he didn't have a chance to qualify for the Super Bowl. Started from 22nd. Daniel Abt, obviously for me as a German, bit of a sad story. He made a major mistake, also locking up his right front wheel, and didn't complete a competitive lap really. And big surprise. Again, just like in Santiago, the leaders in the championship qualifying right at the back. I think we've said it all in our Santiago review about the qualifying system, but I do enjoy the grid being just shaken up like that with the qualifying system.
The thing is, I feel like this time qualifying, I don't feel was massively impacted.
No, it wasn't,
no. Bird had his drive shaft failure, I believe it was, on the outlap. So, you could have a failure in Group 1 or Group 4, it doesn't matter when that failure happens. Okay, so straight away you're out. So, it's just bad luck. Daniel Abt, he locked up going into turn 3. And on a normal series, how much he locked up, probably wouldn't, because he was still only just over a second, I think, off the Oliver Rowland's time. So obviously he lost a bit of time, but in other series he might have not been 21st on the grid. That's just how competitive Formula E is at the moment. And then, you had the Piquet Vergne in there, and he didn't really look competitive all day. So it wasn't a surprise that he didn't make Super Pole, because in practice they were nowhere, really. It was actually a good lap that he was able to sort of match Da Costa, but it proved later on that still wasn't even enough for Super Pole.
Yeah, I think that the Cheetahs were a big surprise, although they've never really gone too well here in the past, have they? So it was an enjoyable qualifying, and I think the fact that it was a sub-minute lap, so we were getting 59-second laps. I think mistakes like Daniel Abt's were really highlighted because they made such a difference. But I'll move away from qualifying a little bit there. I think we covered most of the big stories there. And like I say, Felipe Massa third on the grid was a really solid job, and he's had a difficult start to the season, but I was impressed. Did you want to say something there, Jack?
Yeah,
Massa?
I was going to say
Cool.
I had two things. One, we'll just touch on Massa because you just said him. I think he answered his critics, and to be honest with you, I don't think he's had a bad season. But because he's in a Venturi and he's not really scoring points, and it's a big name, Felipe Massa, everyone's chiming down on him like, you must be winning races. You are an ex-Formula 1 driver. You nearly won the championship in 2008. Like, give the guy a break. Like, he's not in a competitive car. That Venturi is improving, but it's nowhere near the Mahindras, the Nissans, the Audis, the Virgins of the world in Formula E. So, you're expecting him to do miracles in that car. So I feel like, qualifying for him, answer some of those critics. And also, I wanted to just ask a question, because I was thinking about it when we were doing qualifying. Should Formula E tracks be sub 1 minute?
That's
because for me, when I was watching it, I felt like it was too short. I felt like it's a bit silly. I don't think we should have tracks that are under a minute. It might sound cool to have a track that's under a minute, but for me, that was probably the one thing I didn't enjoy from Mexico, was that the track was under a minute.
You see, I think for me, I didn't mind it too much in Mexico because of the fact there was limited opportunities to overtake. So because the track was sub 1 minute, obviously they had 45 attempts to get into turn 1, into turn 3. So I wasn't too fussed about it, but I see your point, and I think if there was, you think back to Santiago where there was maybe 4 or 5 places to overtake on circuits like that, if they chop that in half, then yeah, maybe I'd be a little bit more bothered by it. But no, I don't think it bothers me all that much. Toby, do you
I
agree?
do agree, yeah. I mean, as long as the track provides good racing, I'm fine with sub 1 minute laps. Of course, on the paper, it seems like Formula E's tracks are, inferior to other racing series. But I think if circuits still do provide good racing, and Mexico certainly does provide good racing, I think that's fine.
Okay, interesting. No, I just thought it was an interesting question because I was watching it and I was just like, for me, I was a bit edgy on it, but yeah, it did provide good racing. I'm not going to deny that. It did provide close racing, and you do have, you're right, Daniel, more chances to overtake technically. But at the same time, I was just looking at it like, should we be a bit over 1 minute? But
no, I know what you're saying, because part of me agrees with you, because I wasn't the biggest fan of Mexico, because the whole weekend I'm thinking, there's nowhere really to overtake. It's a really narrow circuit, so somehow it always produces really good races. So there's something about it which makes it a really strong track to go to. But yeah, no, I think we'll move on now. I'll start thinking about that too much. That's really going to dwell over in my mind. But the start then. Nothing too crazy from the start. Most people had a solid getaway. No one stalling on the grid like we saw last year in Paris with Marquinhos. Can never say his name properly, but it was all pretty clean going. Ollie Rowland chucking up a massive Daniel Ricciardo-esque dive bomb into turn 1, moving up to P2. That was brilliant.
How he got that stopped, I don't know.
Yeah,
how he
exactly.
Got it stopped.
That was a mega move. I'm really impressed with Ollie Rowland this weekend. I think he's really stamped his name onto the Formula E scene. But, a bit of kerfuffle in the midfield, a few argy-bargies through turn 3 and a few corner cuts at turn 3. But I suppose that's all hush-hush on lap 1. Then, I think it was lap 2, lap 3, we got the big smash. Nelson Piquet Jr. airborne at the end of the lap. I always get a little bit told off for this, but I enjoy a crash. I think it always... I know, sorry. But it's always interesting. Red flag incident, then it gets serious. And you don't want to see a car airborne, and it's always, a little bit scary. But the incident itself, pretty hard to pin any blame on anyone. The stewards decided that it was a racing incident. I think I would agree as well. I'm interested to know your thoughts. This is a big talking point, so I'll start with you, Jack.
Yeah, I agree. Racing incident. Piquet was obviously trying to go past on the inside, and he got a decent run out of that sweep out of the stadium section at turn 13, going into the 14, 15, 16 chicane. And Vergne was closing the door, but there was space, and I think Piquet just misjudged that space and flew over the top of him. And yeah, racing incident. I don't think there's too much you can really say. It was a bad crash for Piquet, and a bit of annoyance because I feel Piquet since season 1 he's had spells of good performances, but lately, to be fair, I don't think that Jaguar car's as good as people make out to be. Because I think Mitch Evans is struggling, but he is beginning to be outshone a little bit, our season 1 champion. So, I think he needs a good result.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll let you answer this, Toby, but do you think Piquet's now under a bit of pressure? I think he's got 1 point so far this season. Do you think he could be out if he really struggles the rest of the year?
I think ever since Mitch Evans joined the team, he's been under pressure, and under immense pressure. He won the championship, obviously, with every driver having the same car in season 1. And that's enough proof of his driving abilities and capabilities. However, Mitch Evans wasn't driving back then in season 1. And as soon as Mitch joined Jaguar, Nelson had really, really big intra-team competition. And as you said, in season 5, nothing's really going according to plan for him. I feel bad for him, but he needs to deliver if he wants to at least be on level terms with Evans in the course of the next few races. Yeah, not the best of starts into a season for him this time around, Nelson Piquet.
Yeah, I do feel for him. And Mitch Evans, like you say, it's not been the best form this season, but he's one of only 3 drivers that scored a point in every single race. So he's definitely someone in Formula E that is probably one of the better drivers, I would say, in my opinion. But there's probably a slight bit of bias there because I quite like Mitch Evans. So yes, I shouldn't talk about him too much. But the red flag came out, and for some reason, a bit of chaos started to happen. No one decided to come in the pits. They all thought they'd keep on going round. It was all a bit crazy, and then we were unsure when the race was starting up. We were supposedly getting this 10-minute warning, didn't quite get that. It was all a bit of a kerfuffle, but have we had a red flag in Formula E before? Did we have one last year?
I think in Hong Kong, yeah.
Right?
I think Hong Kong 2018, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's I suppose slightly new, but I'd like to think they know to come into the pit lane when it's a red flag and to stop driving round. But anyways, then we get back to racing. Again, not really too much happened. They all came through, well, when the safety car came out, led them round for a couple of laps. Some of them went through attack mode too early. Still something that's being worked on a little bit, and I suppose communication wasn't quite there from the drivers and the teams, and all getting a little bit too eager to get racing again. Once we did get racing again, obviously those drivers that had used it too early ran out of their attack mode a little bit too quickly, so that caused some interesting dynamics. Antonio Felix da Costa went for a move on Buemi, took some damage on his car that he had for the rest of the race. We saw Stoffel Van Dorn use the fun boost, which he got a penalty for, which sorry, did I say fun boost?
Yes.
But why did he use it? Can I just clarify on this? They can't use fan boost in the first half of the race, can they?
No.
No.
It's a stupid rule.
So why did he? Was my thinking. I found that very strange.
Oh, well, you have to ask Stoffel Van Dorn for that one.
That's true.
But yeah, I wrote an article about this. I feel like fan boost, for me, it shouldn't be announced 22 minutes into the race. It should be announced the winners before the race, so that means everyone's in the race. Imagine Piquet, Sims or Vergne. Imagine Vergne retired from that race, and they had fan boost, and then it's a pointless fan boost win if he's out of the race after those 22 minutes. So they should be allowed to use it from the green flag at any point in the race, rather than using it at a specific time for like battery management. It's just too complicated. Just let them use it when they want to use it, and let them have it from the start. Because all these silly rules about, oh, he used it too soon, it's just ridiculous. It really is. I think fan boost, they have to revamp the system. They wanted to put it into the race so you can have a chance to vote for a driver who might be had a bad start. Quickly give him some fan boost. But really and truly, that fan boost ain't going to make a blind bit of difference. And also, the fan boost does not change. That order, probably from the start of practice 1, doesn't really change until we get to the race. So why wait 22 minutes in the race? Just give it to them at the start of the race. Let them use it when they want, and let them have some fun with it. Otherwise, what's the point of it?
I agree, and this year especially, with attack mode, it's not really having much effect. We saw Grassi use it late on in the race to pass Wehrlein. I believe it might have been Roland to pass Roland. Didn't really make any difference whatsoever. I'm not too sure I would revamp it how you would. I definitely agree it does need changing. I like the idea that the voting starts at the beginning of the race, and then at the halfway point we then get it, because I like the idea that, say someone's, I don't know, spun at the start, like Vergne, say, in Marrakesh, give him fan boost and watch them come through the pack. But I'm not the biggest fan of fan boost anyway, and I probably think it'll become less and less important as the years go on, and Formula E implements attack mode even, well, more often perhaps, but I think attack mode worked really well. Toby, I know we didn't really plan to talk about fan boost, but it is a very interesting topic, so have you got any thoughts on revamping the system?
Not anything new, no. I think we're talking about fan boost every week, don't we?
Yeah.
Not really any new ideas. I don't really like the idea of starting the fan boost voting with the green flag and the 5 red lights, but yeah, I think waiting 15 minutes. How long? I think 15 minutes into the race.
22.
I think. Is it 22? I think you can activate it after 22 minutes, but not. But the voting closes 15 minutes into the race.
You're right. Sorry, apologies. Yeah, you're right. 15 minutes after the race, and then you can activate it 22 minutes
into the
after
race.
the race.
Yeah, it's a bit too long, isn't it? Maybe wait.
Well,
so either you wait for 5 minutes after the race, things pan out, maybe a driver retires, and I mean that's not going to change it. I'm just thinking out loudly right now.
Well, that's how it was. That was how it was run. It closed 6 minutes from the race, and those drivers could basically use. Well, it was the second half of the race, so they had to wait till they had to use it. So before season 5, they had to use the fan boost. They got it. It was announced 6 minutes before, and they had to use it before they went to under 50% of battery usage. So they could use it basically straight away once they got the fan boost. Okay, but if after 50%, they weren't allowed to use it. So if they used it because it used too much energy, and I said that in inverted commas, but even though you can't see that, so pointless. But for me, it's just silly, because if you let them have it within like the first 5 minutes, then the race is close, and then there's more chance of getting that fan boost overtake, which the series wants. 22 minutes into a race, the field might be spread out. The driver who gets it might not be in a position to use it, and then might not use it, which we've seen. So then it just makes fan boost, for me, pointless. And if a series who really wants to get behind the fan engagement, really wants to get behind it, and they put drivers in a position where they might not even bother to use it because the race has already panned out for them, and there's no point in them using it because it's just going to waste energy, and they just want to get to the finish because there's no one they could overtake, then it's pointless.
Bit of a bold proposal. What do you think about taking away fan boost from drivers who are retired? So we keep the fan boost voting open for 15 minutes. If a driver who would have won fan boost initially retires in these first 15 minutes, you take away his fan boost and the next best driver in the voting gets it.
Agreed. I think that should happen, because then at least all 5 drivers, which I put in my article as well, which at least all 5 drivers are on the track when fan boost is announced, because it was like we had in Marrakesh, where 5 drivers won it, 2 drivers were already out of the race, so only 3 people used it, and technically no one really did use it because no one was in a position to use it. So yeah, I think we've probably covered fan boost, but
yes.
Yeah, but you can see it's a touchy subject, and for a series that craved it and really wanted it back in season 1 and wanted it to be a game changer, they're really implementing it in a way which is not a game changer.
Well, I think as well, just to round it up, I think with ex-Formula 1 drivers coming in, that doesn't help, because obviously this year Van Dorn is going to win it every single time, and in seasons gone by you've seen a little bit of a mix-up race by race, but this year it seems that every single time you can name those 5 drivers. Maybe you get one wrong, maybe one driver switches out, but yeah. Toby, did you want to say something there?
No, not really.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. All right,
Moving on swiftly.
Away. Yeah. Let's get away from that as far as we possibly can. Mid-race, nothing really happened. We touched on it earlier a little bit. Circuit layout, not the most friendly, I would say, to Formula E. Overtaking, not really a major possibility. I'd say maximum of 2 or 3 places to overtake, but that's still being a little bit kind. We saw Mitch Evans go for a move on Jean-Eric Vergne in the stadium, caused him to do a little spin, but those 2 guys weren't really having the best of races anyway, so that was probably the only highlight mid-race. And then we move on to the last part of the race. So yes, I have just missed out on an entire race almost, but nothing really happened. But that doesn't take away from the fact that I'd say the last 5 minutes I had my hands on my head the whole time. My eyes were glued to the TV. No one knew what was going to happen, because we had this lead 5, which was Wehrlein, Rowland, de Grassi, Buemi and Da Costa, and Wehrlein had led the entire race, and Rowland was really starting to pile on the pressure. De Grassi behind. They all had 1 attack mode left, and I think this was the first point of the whole race boiling over, where Da Costa, who was at the back of the pack, used his attack mode. Then we saw Buemi, de Grassi, so it was almost going in reverse order, but it was only when Rowland went for it, made that little mistake, de Grassi through, and that was when it all started to crumble for the Nissan boys. So I'll just throw it open to either of you two. What was your thoughts going into these final few moments?
It's the story Formula E wanted with the timed races, wasn't it? Timing the races so nobody knows how many laps we're going to have, and then just let the teams try and calculate how long their race is going to be, and will have their energy readings accordingly. that's what happened with Nissan. They thought the race was a lap shorter than a lap shorter than it in the end was, and both Sebastian and Ollie had to really save energy in the last lap. And well, of course, they were planning on finishing both cars in the top 5 and having enough energy for the final lap, but they didn't. Not really the sports way of doing it. It's a bit gimmicky, of course, but that's been the point of criticism for the last 4 races, wasn't it? With all the 45-minute stuff going on. Yeah, I feel a bit for Nissan because they had a fantastic race, absolutely outstanding, and nobody would have thought Nissan to be up that far on the grid in Season 5. But that's just how Formula E is this year. Timed races mean you have to be careful with your energy, and in the worst case, save enough for an extra lap, and both Nissan and Edam's cars didn't do that.
Yeah, it was just Formula E all over, wasn't it? It was just you're having a standard race on a standard Formula 1 circuit, you could say, and all of a sudden, when you think you can't have a crazier race happens, and I couldn't believe it. So I was looking at the clock. I was like, "There's 3 minutes left. There's like just over 3 minutes. They got 6% energy." I was like, and then you could see it also because Jack Nicholls and Dario Franchitti were also calculating it at the same time. They're like, "Hang on a second, hang on. They've only got 6%. There's how many laps?" And everyone's doing this mental arithmetic at the moment. And then like, they're just going to make it. And then you look at the Nissans, and you're like, "Oh my, they got 2%. They're out." And you're like, this changes everything. And literally, it changed the whole entire course of the race. And the last 2 laps, you didn't know who was going to win. You really didn't know who was going to win. You didn't know what was going to happen next. You didn't know who was going to stop. You didn't know if Grassi would make it. You didn't know if Wehrlein would make it. You know, Grassi had a good chance. He had a bit more than them, but you know, he was still attacking, and that percentage was still dropping. And you know, it just threw. And like you said, we were glued. You couldn't tweet. You couldn't. Because you couldn't keep up with it, in a sense. You just needed to watch, absorb, and then take a deep breath and go, "I can't believe that's just happened," and then go, "Now I need to tell someone," and you know, we have to tell the world. Yeah, but that's what it felt like. It was just, and I don't know how many times I've done that in Formula E over the 5 seasons of covering it, where I've just had to put my pen down, stop taking notes, and just watch, because if I'm making a note, I'm going to miss something. And it happens so often in Formula E that it's incredible, and that's why this series is amazing. Even when you're thinking that this race is just a bog standard, we even had it in Marrakesh with the Da Costa Sims. It was a bog standard race, and then all of a sudden something happens, and you're like, wow. And it just happens time and time again, and you know, that's why this series is fantastic.
And that very last lap as well. I know I said earlier there's not many overtaking spots, but my God, did I think Grassi could pass him at any point. Every single corner, he was going for it. So much so that turn 3, Wehrlein ended up cutting the corner, which ultimately ended himself getting a 5-second penalty, which I'll just want to talk to you guys about in a second. But that whole last lap, Grassi the whole time, I don't know how they didn't make any sort of contact. They probably did, to be totally honest with you. But every single corner, we're getting less and less corners. Wehrlein's on 1% energy. He hits 0% energy on the final corner. Grassi snatches it with seconds to go. And if Wehrlein didn't have that penalty, Grassi still would have won. You saw everyone in the crowd thinking, "Oh my God, what has just happened?" You see Alan McNish in the garage screaming with all the boys. I was screaming. Everyone was waking up their family. It was utter carnage.
I can imagine you screaming, Dan. I really can. I can imagine you just screaming like a little girl. It's hilarious. Yeah, just screaming in your bedroom.
Everyone was. It wasn't just me. Everyone was doing it. It was utter madness. So happy for Grassi to get the win. Gutted for Wehrlein. It was Da Costa who'd had this damage all race, suddenly slipped into second, and Mortara somehow I think he had 6% energy left. So I don't know what he was doing all race, but he managed to sneak a third place. But just, I can't even get it into words.
Madness.
I really can't get it into words. It was. So let's start off then. I'll try and calm myself down because even thinking about it is crazy. That Wehrlein penalty. I've seen lots of people saying that was a joke. He shouldn't have got a penalty. Fair racing. I sort of disagree, if I'm being totally honest with you. We saw all weekend drivers attempting to go round the corner. Wehrlein just thought, nah, I'm just going to completely cut it. Which, de Grassi, yes, he did push him off the circuit a little bit, but the key wording that he got the penalty, which we have seen all season long in Formula E, is that if you're cutting a corner, you have to first come to a complete stop, which is what he didn't do, and ultimately got the penalty. So, Tobias, did you agree, or did you think, nah, he shouldn't have got a penalty?
I do agree, however, I have to say that Pascal did slow down afterwards. As soon as he left the escape road, he slowed down, and going into turn 6, I think, the right-hander, the quick one, de Grassi was all over him again, because Wehrlein did slow down, in fact. However, as you already said, the rules clearly state you have to come to a complete stop if you cross the blue tarmac stuff in the escape road, and Pascal didn't do that. So I think the decision is a bit harsh. I mean, not harsh. It's fair, but not the lightest. If that makes any sense. I mean, it's not particularly harsh, but still a fair one. That doesn't make sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I don't understand why they need to stop. I don't understand why
It's
they
weird,
need to
isn't
stop. Okay, we've seen it. Look, Formula 1, they cut the chicane. Okay, if you cut the chicane and gain an advantage, you can cut the chicane, fine. Okay, I think Wehrlein was close. He kind of was pushed off. He sort of did gain an advantage, but he kept the position. He did slow down significantly so de Grassi could catch back up. I think really and truly, Mahindra, I think he was probably right Wehrlein to cross the line first, or tried to attempt to anyway. But I think what Mahindra should have done was let him have the position, let de Grassi through.
But you don't.
And
do
then
that.
just settle for
You
second.
don't do that as a racer.
And I think that should have been fine. If he cut the chicane, I know, but that's what happens. You know, technically, but it happens in other series. In terms of if you cut the chicane and you gain an advantage, and you know you're going to get a 5-second penalty for it, it was better for Mahindra to say, let him have it, settle for 18 points rather than 12 that he got. So he lost 6 points in the end because he got the fastest lap, I think.
He did.
And
yeah.
pole.
And
so he
pole.
got 16 points.
So he got so he got quite a few points.
Yeah, somehow.
So
after all that.
But you know, they could have said just let him have it, let him go through in the next corner and try and keep hold of second. Because second's still a good result. Yes, okay, that's 2 races in a row now where he's had to give up attacking the victory. But he sort of was overtaken into that chicane, and he did sort of cut the chicane. So I think if he just gave the position up, then I don't think there was a need for a penalty. I don't understand why they need to stop. If he stopped in that thing, he doesn't lose 1 position in that thing, he loses 6 positions in that thing, which he ended up losing anyway. Okay? Because of the penalty. Because of how close they were together. Yeah, he would have lost all those positions. So rather than losing 5 positions, lose the one that you're fighting with, and then move on and try your best to finish the race second or third.
I think if he had stopped, he would have lost more positions than just 1. I think he'd have dropped behind D'Ambrosio, Lotterer, and maybe ended up 6th. Still, I mean, if he had stopped, I think he would have ended up in 6th anyway. Because the drivers behind him were just so close to him.
It's a difficult one. It's a really difficult one to put your finger on. But I think honestly, I would say penalty's probably just deserved. I think he is a bit harsh, but at the same time, he did sort of cut the chicane. He did gain a lasting advantage from it. So if we would use Formula 1 speak, I know it's a different spirit, but I feel like that's how the Formula E should run at the same time. I don't understand this stopping business in the chicane. Wehrlein did gain a lasting advantage from that because he kept the lead till the last corner, and only lost the lead of the race because he ran out of energy. So he gained a lasting advantage, so that 5-second penalty was done. If he swapped positions and let de Grassi through, in my opinion, if he crossed the line second and got a 5-second penalty, then I would have said he shouldn't have got a penalty.
And just quickly adding to that, I'm sorry, then you can go ahead in a second. Right. I think if he had stopped, he would have used obviously more energy and maybe would have run out of it earlier. Because obviously accelerating a car takes more fuel, and the same applies to electric vehicles. If you start from 0 miles an hour and try to accelerate to 20, you do take more fuel, or in this case energy, to accelerate your car. And if Pascal had to come to a complete stop and would have accelerated again, he would have used a lot more energy than he did, and maybe would have run out of energy exiting the final chicane. And that would have meant he didn't have the momentum to cross the line, which happened, and that's the reason he finished the race. If that had happened 50 meters earlier, he would have retired, no points, not 22nd, but maybe 19th in front of the two Nissans.
But, that's the thing Formula E needs to look at. Do we want races decided when energy's on the critical limits that it was in Mexico, and how they managed to get on the critical limits when everyone's like, we should be fine on energy? Why should we have a race decided by a car stopping in the thing and losing that amount of energy? Why would Formula E allow a race to be decided by someone stopping and using that more energy? That's what I don't understand with the stopping.
I can understand it, like last time in Santiago in the chicane, where that's sort of that shortcut. But I agree with you. When you're actually full on racing, then I think the system in Formula 1 where you let someone through, I think that works better. But I think for me, I can deal with it because he got 16 points, which is more than a third place. So yes, he doesn't get the trophy, but at least he's come away with some solid points.
Did you get 16? I think 12. Let me just check that.
I think it was 12.
Let me just check that.
I'm pretty sure it was 12.
Is it 12?
Which still is...
Yeah, I think because he finished 6th, correct? He finished 6th.
Okay, yeah, he did,
which is 8 points. He got 3 for the fastest lap, which is 11. 3 for pole position, which is 11, and 1 for the fastest lap, which is 12. So he should have finished with 12 points. I was wondering.
I tell you what it is. I apologise there, but I tell you what it is. It's because D'Ambrosio is somehow 4th, so I'm seeing a Mahindra in 4th, and I'm thinking, my God, I don't know how D'Ambrosio's ended up in front of Wehrlein. That in itself is mega. I'll quickly just go through the top 10 race results. So he had De Grassi, who got the win, then Da Costa, who somehow held on for 2nd, Mortara, who somehow got 3rd, D'Ambrosio somehow got 4th, Lotterer, I didn't even realise he was in this race, got 5th, then came Wehrlein in 6th, Mitch Evans, after his pretty chaotic race, despite nothing too much happening, he ended up 7th, Massa starting 3rd, got 8th, a difficult race for him, but still learning the sport, and I suppose similar to the HWA boys, it's brilliant that they just finished a race, so that's positive for them, getting that little bit more experience. Sam Bird 9th, okay, that's strange, and then Daniel App 10th, so chaotic race throughout the entire field. Moving on, well, I suppose not moving on, we're rounding up the race. I want to know your driver of the day. We didn't talk about this beforehand, and I'm putting you on the spot, but I will happily go 3rd. Anyone want to go first for their driver of the day?
Pascal Wehrlein again.
Pascal Wehrlein.
Yeah. Okay, and you, Dan?
Who did you say, Toby? Sorry,
both of us said Pascal Wehrlein.
Oh, you both said Wehrlein.
Yeah, at the same time, we were in sync. Yeah.
Okay.
We were in sync. We said at the same time. So beat
Anyone
that.
Want to swap? Anyone want to swap their answer?
You could say Oliver Rowland, and I suppose it wasn't his fault. I suppose it's the team error that told him to lose the energy in the race to go away. And you could also give it to the Grassi, but I'll stick my head out and always go for the bit more controversial ones and go with Rowland then. But yeah, mainly because he was on Wehrlein's gearbox for the whole race and had a good chance to win it. And for a driver that's in his about 5th or 6th race now, was a good result and a really good progression for Roland.
Thank you for being diplomatic, Jack. I appreciate that. Toby, I'm going to have to ask then, why Pascal Wehrlein?
Because the way he managed his lead was really impressive. It's his third race in Formula E. He didn't start in Aderia, obviously. And being in a position to lead a race, manage his energy, at least for the most part of the race, if you exclude the last 50 meters, or 20, manages his energy, managed the gap to the drivers behind, defending with Lucas de Grassi trying to overtake him left, right and centre. It's been a really impressive job by Pascal, and that deserves my driver of the day title for him.
That's more than fair. I'll tell you what is interesting though, is that everyone you just mentioned, Jack, and plus Pascal Wehrlein, that is not who I had in my head. So that's obviously proves I'm wrong, because you both went for Wehrlein. But I would go to Costa. I think that whole race, driving with damage, his steering was slightly bent down the straight, so it was a fair chunk of damage. Finishing second, I'm absolutely gobsmacked by that. I think that was a really strong race. Yes, he's got arguably one of the best cars in Formula E, though I'm still not too sure we really know the running order, and race by race it changes. So I was really impressed by him. And coming off the back of 2 non-finishes, I think this was a really strong return to form and proves his intentions for the championship. Now, we got a few more minutes left, and again, I haven't mentioned this to either of you two, but I'm thinking, the season so far, 4 races, 4 different winners from a different team, 9 different drivers on the podium in 4 races, 6 different teams have got podiums already this year, and just 3 drivers have points in every single race, D'Ambrosio, Evans and Daniel Apps. So to finish off this podcast, I want to know who's going to be champion. There you go. I want you two to tell me who's going to be champion. And Toby, I'm going to start with you.
It's anyone's game. I have no idea whatsoever who's going to be champion. I mean, we have completed the first quarter of the year already. Feels a bit weird to say that because it's only February, but we have 1 quarter of the season behind us already. I mean, D'Ambrosio's doing a really good job this year, winning in Marrakesh, 15 points in Aderia, 12 again in Mexico this time around. He's doing a solid job. Mahindra certainly looks to be in contention for the team's title if they continue collecting good points like they're doing right now. I think Mahindra is going to have a shot at least the top 3, if not top 2. But in terms of the Drivers' Championship, no idea. No.
Stick your neck on the line. Say a name.
Go on.
Because I'm going to have to in a minute, just to, please.
I'd be really happy for Antonio Felix da Costa at this stage.
Okay.
Jack, go on.
Okay. Dan, we hate you for this question.
Sorry.
We really do. Because Formula E, how can you tell? What have we really learned from these first 4 races? We've learned that anyone can win. To me, at this stage, I'm going to say Pascal Wehrlein.
Ooh!
Whoa!
I'm going to say Pascal Wehrlein. You know why? Because that Mahindra is consistent now. The problem is, yeah, and it's a bit. But to be fair, it's like we're all going ooh. he could finish last in the next race because that's what nearly happened to Sam Bird. He was, and as much. But I'm gonna go Wehrlein because he's impressed me in his first 2 races, because Marrakesh doesn't really count, being knocked out in the first corner. So you take Santiago and Mexico, and he's already within the top 5, I believe. Top 5, top 6 of the championship.
Yeah, he's 5th.
So he's already there. He's already in contention. And because people like Sam Burton, because you can have that crazy race, if he can stay consistent, and that Mahindra car is consistent, and I believe that Tobias is right, and I think what an achievement Mahindra are doing at the moment, because this series is getting so competitive. And Mahindra are only a small manufacturer. They're not a massive manufacturer. They're not in the same league, sadly, as Nissan, Audi, and the others. I've forgotten. But especially when Porsche and Mercedes come in next season, you don't expect Mahindra to be fighting those names. So I think what they're doing is incredible, and they look the most consistent team. You could also point for Virgin and maybe Sam Bird. Okay, you could also maybe point to Da Costa, as Tobias said, because BMW look very consistent. I wouldn't say Verne. I don't think Techeetah have been consistent enough to win the championship, and I think Mexico was a real eye-opener. Like, I still believe they are the quickest car, but they haven't hooked up a race yet. And if you're not going to hook up a race, you're not going to win a championship. I know there's still 8 to go, but you're not going to win a championship the way they're going. So at this present moment, I think the driver to beat is Pascal Wehrlein.
Now, I would agree, but that's boring. I don't want to be boring. I had Wehrlein in my head as well. I think he's really got that star quality, and I'd love to see him do it. And like you said, in these last 2 races, he's really impressed. But that's boring. I don't want to be boring. So you did mention him just then, but Sam Bird, I'd love to see him get it. Yeah. And even today, starting dead last, worked his way up through to 9th. He's got something special, and I think of all the drivers on the grid, he deserves it the most. And I think just almost that fairy tale story a little bit of Sam Bird getting it, I would love to see. And as well, I think the Virgin car, a little bit like the Mahindra team, is outperforming itself a little bit. And in seasons gone by, it's that Virgin team, it showed up to some races and been absolutely nowhere on the pace. But I think this year, maybe not Adderia, but I think for the rest of the races, it's proved that it's a race-winning car, and I think he can do well. And so I'm gonna say Sam Bird. But is there anything else you two wanted to mention about this race?
Sam Bird was Formula E-Zone's tip before the beginning of the season to be the world champion. So
there you go.
Then there you go. We put our neck on the line at the beginning of the season and picked someone, and we thought it would be Bird. We had our heads in our hands after Saudi Arabia, but after that one. But it seems like they're coming good. So if that one was to happen, then maybe we get our prediction right. Maybe I should put some money in the lottery.
I mean, it's a solid one, and I think I agree with you. After Adderia, it was almost looked like, this is going to be a BMW Techeetah running away with it. So maybe Toby's been boring saying Da Costa, and BMW will run away with it for the rest of the season. Who knows? But I think we'll leave it there. So Toby, thanks for coming on again, mate. Thanks for being boring with your predictions.
Thanks for having me with my boring predictions.
You have to remember, he's German, okay? So he's sophisticated, okay? He's realistic. Yeah, that's why he's on the podcast, because he keeps us Brits down a peg. Yeah, he keeps us on track. Yeah, so that's why he's such a vital part. Boring. Now we go sophisticated and realistic. How about that, Tobias?
Yeah. Fair enough. Sounds better. Yeah.
And Jack, cheers for coming on, mate. Just before we go,
no problem.
Don't forget to put your signature down for the Fun Boost petition.
Yeah, I will.
#FunBoost. Thanks for having us.
So a big thank you once again to Jack and to Tobias for talking about this crazy race. We'd love to know who you think should have got the Driver of the Day award. Do you agree with us? You probably disagree with us, to be totally honest. And who do you think is going to be Formula E Season 5 World Champion? This podcast was brought to you by the brilliant boys and girls over at Formula E Zone. For all the latest and greatest Formula E news, feel free to head over to any of the social media platforms, whether that be the YouTube channel, or feel free to tweet us at Formula E Zone. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time in Hong Kong.